Alright guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mats channel. It's Maddie here, and it's Friday, which means we're going to be talking about the best meta decks. Now, Ruler of the Skies just came out, and it's only been a couple of days since the metagame changed with all of the new cards, and we're kind of trying to figure out which decks are in fact the best decks. So I've been keeping my eye on the metagame. Today, we're going to be on PocketMads.com, and we're going to be taking a look at successful decks from online tournaments over the last few days. We definitely have some idea which new decks players are gravitating towards, but it's going to take some time, right, for us to kind of get the data, get the results of some larger tournaments to know which decks are, in fact, at the forefront of the metagame. But things are looking to be completely different, like totally different than what they were last season. So many of these new cards are really strong, and I think they will have a pretty profound impact on the metagame. So we're going to talk about this. This is kind of a part 2 of yesterday's video, which if you haven't seen yesterday's video, go check it out. We took a look at a bunch of new decks that were built by people in the community and then posted to PocketMads.com. If you want to check out the website, down in the description below. Also, before we get into the decks, definitely go register for PMPT number 40. It's our first tournament of this new season, and it is tomorrow at noon Eastern time. Link to register also down in the description below. So let's dive right into it. I'm going to give my input on these new decks, but I'm also going to be kind of updating you on, the popularity, the win rates, and just sort of the overall trends of the early metagame. This weekend, of course, bunch of large tournaments, including ours. There's a large tournament actually going on as I record this right now, so the results of all of these tournaments are going to be very interesting, and we're going to be covering it all on Monday for the first official meta report, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Anyway, let's get right into it. So guys, the first deck that we're going to talk about is Vespiquen, because we talked about this a little bit yesterday. This is a deck that a lot of people are gravitating towards early this season. I honestly just think that Vespiquen EX is an incredibly strong card, and I think that Grass type right now was something that a lot of people felt really good about playing. Grass has just so many benefits going for it that I think, as long as any relatively strong cards come out for the Grass type, they're going to instantly be a little bit more advantageous in certain ways. So here's the deck list, and by the way, we have updated the website so I can upload or bring up the code here on screen. I can make it bigger so you guys should be able to scan this very easily. So here's the code for this Vespiquen deck. This is an example. I believe this exact list got first place at about a 250 player tournament already this season. And I think a big reason why Vespiquen has been so successful is because the new kind of buffs and improvements and inclusions to the dark type are phenomenal. So a lot of these dark type decks kind of came early into this metagame, whether it's the new Absol that can hit for 50 plus 10 with the new tool card, or Hoopa EX, these sort of inclusions to Hydreigon, including the new tool card in general, to things like Hydreigon, to Zoroark, even Dark Greninja. They really kind of took the metagame by storm early this season, and they were some of the most dominant decks in that first day or two. And as we know, all of those Pokemon are kind of weak to grass. So that's kind of where Vespiquen slid in. But here's the thing, right? When you're playing a strong grass type archetype like Vespiquen, you have Ogerpon EX, which can protect you from any of those sleep/status condition decks, which there's more than just sleep. Blaziken and Sceptile EX, the Megas are still pretty common, so it's nice to just have immunity to all status conditions. Pheromosa, Kartana are strong. This deck list was playing one Shuckle. However, people are definitely starting to realize, I think, a little bit that Shuckle is a good card, especially in this deck. It's pretty tanky, especially with Leaf Cape. And also, you can just retreat for 1 energy, go into Vespiquen, and then discard it. And that's what Vespiquen does, by the way. It does 70 damage, but if you discard a basic grass Pokemon from your bench, it does 70 more. So for 2 energies, you can deal 140. Has 140 HP. It is a stage 1 Pokemon. We're attaching Leaf Cape to it, though, to give it 170 HP. And again, Kartana and Pheromosa are just strong leadoffs, right? So when you're playing a grass deck, you have access to Leaf Cape, you have access to Ogerpon, you have access to Fragrant Forest, Quick Growth Extract, things like Erica, right? So grass just has a ton of really, really important support right now, and it's a really big deal, right? Grass decks effectively don't have to play Pokeball, which is a really big deal because Fragrant Forest is in general just a better Pokeball. So here's the deck list, right? 2 Combi, 2 Vespiquen, 1 Kartana, 1 Pheromosa, and 1 Shuckle. So those are going to be kind of your leadoff options. And then we have an Ogerpon for the back, right? 140 is just a ton of damage, especially considering you're likely going to live a hit anyway at 170 HP with Vespiquen. Very consistent with Forest, with Quick Growth Extract, Erica for the healing. Just a really, really good deck all around. And I think it's been capitalizing in my opinion, on the popularity of some of these upgraded and enhanced dark type decks that we're seeing kind of all over the metagame. I'll be interested to see how like the next couple of days go into this weekend, because the meta tends to sort of shift very quickly, and the people that are playing tournaments in Pokemon Pocket, playing online tournaments, they're very quick to sort of adapt to the metagame and what players are kind of commonly playing, right? So it's definitely going to be very interesting to see, but very, very strong. Has won kind of 2 of the largest tournaments so far, this deck has. Vespiquen definitely looking to be substantial as sort of the one of the best, at least, new grass type Pokemon in the game. Next up is going to be Mega Gyarados and Shapedo, right? So Mega Shapedo is a really, really strong card. This is something that I think a lot of people realized was going to see a ton of play, and it has seen a ton of play. Here is the code, by the way. Now, the thing about Mega Shapedo is that Mega Shapedo, it's strong, but it's not a Pokemon that can sort of carry the deck list, right? It's a really strong Pokemon that you're going to play it and pair it with something else. And the water type has no shortage of strong Pokemon that you could play with Shapedo. We gave a couple of examples of different decks in yesterday's video for Mega Shapedo. I just wanted to give you an additional example of what people are playing. And this is going to be with Mega Gyarados, so an entirely Mega deck. The upside here is that they're both stage 1 Pokemon, so you could have access to Elegant Cape if you wanted to play it, even though this deck is not playing it. They both have a lot of HP. Soothing Shore is great for healing, but the big thing is Wallace, right? So Carvanha and Magikarp are both water-type Pokemon under 50 HP, so they could both be kind of turbo-evolved with Wallace, right? Which is in general a really big deal. This deck here is playing 1 Irida and Soothing Shore just for a ton of sustain and a ton of healing. A really sticky deck. It can stay around for a very, very long time. Playing double Research, double Pokeball, 1 Copycat, 1 Irida. No Lissia in this deck list. And if you're wondering why we're not playing Lissia, even though we're playing 4 basic Pokemon under 50 HP, the main reason for that is because most of the time, if you either lead Magikarp or Carvanha, you're likely going to just choose to use Wallace. At least with Carvanha, you're going to use that Wallace on turn 1 just so you can immediately get into Mega Shapedo. Now, Wallace still has that same issue, which I've run into multiple times, even when I'm playing Mega Shapedo so far this season, is that sometimes you start the game with double Mega Shapedo in your hand and Wallace, and you can't play Wallace, and it's really funny when that happens, but it does happen sometimes, so keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, the whole concept here is that you go Turbo Shark, early damage, be super hyper aggressive, maybe take some KOs, and then you just set up Mega Gyarados, you free retreat into it, and you start hitting for Mega Blaster, right? So these two Pokemon do complement themselves pretty well. 70 damage plus 140 is 210, and not that that really matters too much because you're going to be attacking probably more than once with Mega Shapedo. So you're 2-hit KOing a lot of different Pokemon in the game. And again, we did talk about kind of Mega Shapedo with the non-EX Gyarados, the Wild Swing to discard Shapedo. That's a strategy that I think is very valuable. You could play Qianpao with it, right? So Qianpao Shapedo is kind of the most popular version of Mega Shapedo just because Qianpao is such a strong card. And then also, you could play Suicune in the deck list. There was an Alola Ninetales deck that placed well recently. So there's so many different ways. And decks like this typically struggle a little bit to gain popularity early on in seasons because there's not one definitive list that a lot of people are playing, right? When you take a look at things like Vespiquen EX, the majority of the deck is sort of the same. People are kind of playing different leadoff options with it. But for the most part, you know kind of exactly how you're going to be playing Vespiquen EX. Mega Shapedo doesn't have that benefit. So right now, there's like 4 or 5 really popular archetypes for Mega Shapedo that a lot of people are playing, and they're just kind of spread out. So we'll have to see if any of those can kind of win a big tournament, because they might kind of become the default version of Mega Shapedo. I do suspect that this is going to be a relevant Pokemon. Now, is it going to end up being better than Suicune? That's a tough thing to say, right? It certainly has the potential to do it. It's a very different card than Suicune is. It's a bit faster paced, a bit more aggressive, but maybe in general less consistent multi-card combo and all. But I do think Mega Shapedo is exceptionally strong. So I wanted to highlight this. Just one example, and again, guys, here is that code for you guys to scan and immediately just kind of put it right into your game. Hopefully, the code works. I assume it will. I mean, this is as big on the screen as I can make it, so hopefully you guys can scan this and it'll work out for you guys. But yeah, no, Mega Shapedo is really strong. Here's just a Mega Gyarados example of it. Next up, let's talk about Mega Gallade a little bit, because Mega Gallade to me is a strong Pokemon. And I do want to talk about it because I don't think this is something that a lot of people have been playing. at least so far this season. Just fighting in general, not many people have been gravitating towards it, not in favor as much as maybe some of the other stuff. However, I do think Wally is a really strong card, and even though a lot of the more exciting new things that they added to the game don't really utilize Wally, I think Wally's going to have a ton of potential throughout Pokemon Pocket's future as just in generally a really useful card. Things like Mega Gallade, things like Mega Metagross, Typhlosion EX, these are cards that people haven't really been bringing to tournament play, at least, and I think that there's definitely potential for all of those decks, but here's just one example of a Mega Gallade deck that did well at a recent online tournament. They're just playing one Hitmonlee, one Sock with a 2-1-2 Gallade line, so double Rare Candy, double Wally. And the concept with Gallade, as opposed to something like a Mega Lucario, is that it's different, right? It's stronger in some ways, but, you know, weaker in other ways. It's less consistent being a Stage 2 Pokemon, so it requires a little bit more to get set up. It does have 30 more HP than Mega Lucario, and it can hit for sort of similar numbers. I think it's technically 10 more damage than Mega Lucario, but the upside to Gallade is that you can turbo energy to it with Wally, right? So even though you have to Rare Candy or you have to evolve twice to get into Gallade, theoretically you can kind of boost the energies and accelerate an additional energy to it to kind of get it a little bit online, potentially more quickly. There are scenarios where you can go turn 2 150 Mega Gallade if you do get turn 2 Rare Candy and Wally, which isn't that uncommon. So I actually do think that Mega Gallade has a ton of potential. We're going to have to just wait and see if it ends up being more popular or more successful than Mega Lucario. I do think Mega Lucario kind of positions itself well as kind of a late game deck anyway, because, you know, 190 means you're going to live hits for most things regardless, and you're hitting for a very similar amount of damage, so it doesn't really matter if you have the potential to be kind of up and running and turn earlier. Even though Mega Gallade does have that potential, it's just not necessarily something that I think is like that important. Now, this new Ralts is very interesting with lead. This lead attack for one colorless does allow you to kind of grab a supporter from your deck and put it into your hand, which is just card draw in general, which is nice, but maybe you can grab Wally and then just kind of go turn 2 Rare Candy. It is a combo deck, but we're a fighting type, so we still have access to Arena of Antiquity and Karina to deal just an absurd amount of damage. The fighting type in general is definitely an archetype that is focused around having that additional reach that most other decks just don't really have the ability to do, right? So I think Mega Gallade is quite similar, in fact, to Lucario, but to me, I kind of categorize it more as like a high roll version. And again, here is just one example of a Mega Gallade deck that people are playing, and I do think this is pretty in line with what I would expect Mega Gallade decks to look like. The fighting type archetype doesn't have a ton like going for it, besides the fact that you can play Karina in Antiquity. We have kind of the same leadoff Pokemon that we've had for quite some time, things like Hitmonlee, things like Sock, and that's basically the archetype, right? Here's the code for anyone that is, of course, interested in playing Mega Gallade. If you have Mega Gallades and you just want to test it out, go ahead and do so. But keep in mind, you know, the popular decks that people are really playing a lot right now early in the season are Vespiquen, mainly because it's been so competitively viable. And then the Dragonair, Dragon-type decks with Mega Rayquaza are everywhere. They're exceedingly popular. And then Mega Shapedo is probably that third most popular, new archetype. And then, of course, all of the new dark stuff with Hoopa, like that's also popular. So those are kind of the big ones to me that people are playing. Dark type decks, any of them really, with the new Absol, with the new tool card, with Hoopa EX, we're going to have to just wait and see, which of those dark type decks become super popular or the most popular. It might end up just being Hydreigon again, but yeah, it's Vespiquen, Shapedo, Rayquaza. Like those are kind of the core archetypes rather right now that are seeing a ton of play. And I think they probably will continue to see play, quite frankly. But anyway, there is Mega Gallade. Next up, though, he's going to be the Mega Manectric deck. So we talked about this just a little bit yesterday, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it did do well at a recent online tournament. So the new Helioisk with Electro Spark with Clement and Clement's Backpack makes this a hyper-aggressive deck. And when you pair it with Mega Manectric, even though they both kind of have a similar purpose of just being right in your face early on, Helioisk is just a really, really, really good Pokemon to have on the board early on, maybe take an early KO or two, maybe KO some basic Pokemon or some baby Pokemon. That way, when Mega Manectric comes in later in the game, it actually is exceptionally powerful. So as we saw with Mega Manectric in previous seasons, it was kind of a Pokemon that you got out on turn 2 and just started hitting and maybe KOing things with 80 damage. And then it would kind of scale from there. It would get stronger the more KOs you got. But I actually do think that Helioisk is an incredible card, right? We have Elegant Cape thrown in here. We have May as well. So we're running a 2-2-2-2 line of Pokemon, all stage 1s. So maybe a Sightseer as well could be relevant. We're playing May instead of Sightseer, but we're also playing Clement. And you got to keep in mind, Clement does search your deck for a for a Magneton, a Helioisk, and Clement's Backpack, right? So you're basically playing Clement to pull these cards out of your deck, and it makes it kind of hyper consistent and hyper aggressive. So I really do recommend this. Lightning has no shortage of strong archetypes, so it will be kind of hard to replace some of those other strong lightning archetypes that we've seen in previous seasons, right? Or Choreo decks, Magnezone, not Manectric, Miraidon, right? So the Miraidon archetypes, like those things are going to be popular. But as far as like really aggressive lightning type decks go, I actually really like Manectric. And when you pair it with Helioisk, all of a sudden you're aggro, you're lightning, you're aggressive, you're fast paced, and you're a spread deck, which I think is actually quite interesting in the current metagame. So as far as all of the new decks and new ways to play all of the new cards, like this is one of my more, the decks I'm actually more excited about, just because I think it's got a lot going for it. Again, like the Clement's Backpack package is absolutely broken, and it has seen some play with Magneton in Magnezone decks before, but now with Helioisk, we can kind of just go all out and just sort of play a deck that is really designed around the Clement package and is a lot stronger because of it. Here is the code. Try this one out. This is a really, really strong deck, and a deck that I actually really like just because I think it fits thematically with the lightning type, right? When you see a deck like this, and I always liked Mega Manectric because, again, thematically for the lightning type archetype, it just feels like it makes sense. And this is a really, really nice version of this. It's something that I love spread decks. They're always like my favorite type of deck. In the official Pokemon DCG in the past and in Pokemon Pocket, we haven't had as many like relevant spread decks. Flygon, I guess, is one example, but this has a ton of potential. Somebody did comment, like, does Clement's Backpack also boost the damage of the bench damage from Helioisk? And it does. Yeah, it boosts the damage against any Pokemon that you attack. And if you're hitting all Pokemon on your opponent's board, it's going to do plus 20 to all of your opponent's Pokemon, which is a really big deal. It's a massive buff here. It's weird how long it took them, right? Like we have Clement's Backpack, and then they gave us like the perfect Pokemon. And I think it's got legs. It can go for quite a long time. This is going to be relevant, I hope, because I do think it's quite strong. Next up is just another example of kind of a dark type deck. So here's a Hydreigon Hoopa EX deck with the new Absol that did well recently. Again, playing that Deceptive Needle. This card is really, really good, especially when paired with the new Enhanced Blade Absol, which came out recently. This Pokemon does 20 damage, but 30 more if you have a tool card attached, so that's 50, but Deceptive Needle does 10 damage after your turn. So on turn 1, going second, you can just hit for 50, plus 10 is 60, and you're just going to KO basic Pokemon and probably win the game. So this deck list was playing double Hoopa EX, which is another really, really strong early game Pokemon. It does bench damage, but it also, of course, has a ton of HP, so it's just a strong leadoff option that can really whittle down your opponent, and then maybe you can kind of just retreat and then go into Hydreigon after that, right? So you will be able to retreat with the one energy that you're attaching to Hoopa, so it's not a terrible Pokemon to lead off with and then just retreat. Like, you never feel like you need to commit additional energies to the Hoopa because Bombardier is going to give it a -1 retreat cost, so you can just discard that one energy that we have on Hoopa and then go into Hydreigon and then just actually start hitting, right? So this deck list has a lot going for it, and honestly, I do think that the way that we're playing these dark type decks with Hydreigon specifically, but also Zoroark, maybe even Dark Greninja, they're going to change around a lot. They're going to be very different. Some cards are just good. Hydreigon's good. Zoroark is good. But honestly, like kind of the Mega Pokemon stuff with Sableye and Absol, I just don't know if it's as good as playing more of a front-loaded deck, especially in a high-roll strategy like Hydreigon, which sometimes struggled in the early game because you just didn't have a lot of strong options if you didn't get that Hydreigon out on turn 2 with the rare candy combo. Now you have Hoopa, now you have Absol, and half the Pokemon in your deck list are just incredible leadoff options. So dark-type decks have become not only still some of the stronger decks in the game, but some of the more fast-paced, aggressive decks, which is a really big theme around this particular set, is that a lot of these new strategies are just super hyper-aggressive, just really in your face, super early. And I think it's one of the main things that's happening power creep-wise in this new season, right? With Shapedo, with the new dark type stuff, with Helioisk. It's quite aggressive. A lot of these strategies are very, very, very aggressive here. Here's the code for this Hydreigon list. Now, again, I don't know, because we did talk about Hydreigon previously. I've yet to highlight a Zoroark list so far this season, but they are out there and they're really good, so you're just going to want to stay tuned. We'll continue to cover more archetypes as time goes on. I'm probably going to do like an upgraded decks video either tomorrow or Sunday, so if you're kind of interested in how to best upgrade some of the archetypes that were popular in previous seasons, we're going to have a video about that specifically, probably sometime in the next day or two, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that for sure. But yeah, no, I think Hydreigon's got top tier potential. this season. Unfortunately, I came out of the gate swinging, so Vespiquen had to come in and kind of keep it in check, and I think we're kind of seeing that right now. I believe Vespiquen is the most played deck at today's 300-player tournament, so Grass kind of coming in, keeping the Dark-type decks in check, but maybe that will kind of create some room for Fire decks to come in, maybe Typhlosion, or just maybe some old Fire-type decks that could maybe utilize Wally. I don't know, maybe just Blaziken. It's hard to say, but we're going to have to just wait and see. So shout out to Hydreigon, a very, very strong, incredibly strong deck. Hoopa, Absol, Deceptive Needle, these are massive buffs to a Dark archetype that was already strong. Dark was always really good. Anyway, we're going to wrap this video up with 4 more decks. That's right, we have 4 more decks that we're going to try to go through somewhat quickly. These are all Dragon-type, Dragonair, Rainbow Cave decks because there's a lot of different ways that you can play Dragonair. So let's kind of break this all down. This is going to be a Gouging Fire deck list with Dragonair. So double Gouging Fire, double Dragonair, and just 1 Mega Rayquaza. Now, Gouging Fire is a really obvious partner because it also has that Fire and Lightning attack cost. So, right, the same idea of kind of getting Dragonair set up to kind of fulfill the energy cost of Rayquaza and just get in there and start hitting. It's the same thing with Gouging Fire. It does require 3 energies instead of 2, so it might kind of get online a turn later, but keep in mind, it does really work well for the prize math, right? Forcing your opponent to go through a couple of Gouging Fires before they have to go through Mega Rayquaza is in general a bit more of an effective strategy, right? And that way, you know, if your Mega Rayquaza is in the active spot, it can't really get stuck there too often, and then kind of brought back through and KO'd with maybe Cyrus, you know what I mean? So there's a lot going on in Mega Rayquaza decks in general. Gouging Fire is a pretty good example of that. It's a really good card. We also have Professor Sada. So these kind of ancient dragon Pokemon that we got a couple of sets ago in Paradox Drive, they really are exceptionally strong now with Rainbow Cave, with Professor Sada, with Dragonair. You basically have the potential to kind of very consistently and very often get these energies out of the discard pile and onto your Gouging Fire. So that's kind of why we're playing this Gouging Fire deck with Rayquaza. Nothing else is really needed. There's going to be so many different Dragon-type decks popular this season, so many different popular Mega Rayquaza decks this season. We're not playing the Ancient Booster Capsule, mostly because it only works for Gouging Fire. It's not something you would ever attach to Rayquaza or Dragonair. But it is, in fact, a pretty strong card, so maybe a deck focused around Gouging Fire could utilize the Ancient Booster Capsule to give it up to 150 HP. That could be quite strong, but I don't know if that kind of damage threshold is that worth it. A lot of Pokemon are actually hitting that kind of 150 range, but maybe not. So double Copycat, Pokeball, Research, Rainbow Cave, 1 Cyrus, 1 Giant Cape, 1 PCL, 1 Sada, 1 Lucky Ice Pop. Again, just an example of a list that did well recently at an online tournament, and one that I think does make sense. And it's exciting. I think a lot of people were really excited about kind of these new ancient dragon Pokemon because they did work somewhat well with Sada. And now with Dragonair, with Rainbow Cave, they're just massive buffs, right? And it doesn't have to be Fire Lightning with Mega Rayquaza. It could literally be like any of those ancient dragon Pokemon. Maybe you can throw them all together in a deck. Like Rainbow Cave just buffs that a lot. So it's something to keep our eye on. But this is just an example here with Gouging Fire that I thought was really good. I got to bring up the code here. If I ever forget to pull up a code for a deck that I'm talking about, I genuinely do apologize. I also have to remember to move my cursor because if my cursor is on the screen over the code, then it just won't work when you guys scan it, which maybe already did happen in this video, which again, if that was the case, I'm sorry. I'll try to remember to do that, but at least we do have the code so you guys can go ahead and put these decks directly into your game, which is really cool. Shout out to PocketMats.com. Shout out to our developer, D-Shuck, absolute legend. So this next one's going to be Dragon Arcanna Altaria with Mega Rayquaza and Dragonair. So that's, again, just another kind of way that you could be playing Dragonair. Dragon Arcanna is a good card, and it's been a good card for quite some time. 2 colorless energies, and it hits for 100 if you have 2 different energy types attached to it. And Dragonair does that. It's able to get those energies down, and again, why not just pair it with Mega Rayquaza? So it's basically the exact same concept as the Gouging Fire deck. However, we do have to play 2 more Pokemon because you got to play Swablu to play Altaria. However, it's perhaps maybe a little bit better or easier to play in certain ways. It actually has a bit more HP, 10 more HP, hits for a similar amount of damage, but it's 2 energies instead of 3. Just a very similar strategy altogether. You know, you're forcing your opponent to go through double Dragon Arcanna, and then you have Mega Rayquaza on the back end. But if you do lead with Mega Rayquaza, there's nothing saying you can't just go turn 2 150, right, with the Dragonair combo. So very, very strong deck. This deck is playing 1 Sightseer because we are playing multiple Stage 1 Pokemon. We're playing 4, in fact. So that's why I do kind of like this version, maybe a bit better than Gouging Fire. Not only does it have 1 less energy attached, but you're playing Copycat, you're playing Sightseer, Double Research, Pokeball, Protective Poncho. So it actually feels pretty consistent. I think Sightseer is a really good good card in anything Dragonair. So if you can play Dragonair with other Stage 1 Pokemon, I think you will actually have kind of a benefit being able to play Sightseer. But again, most of the deck is kind of identical. Protected Poncho is nice for these decks. There is still some bench damage flying around. So being able to kind of Poncho that Rayquaza that's sitting on your bench or your Dragonairs, whatever it might be, it's good to kind of keep those Pokemon safe so they don't get targeted and brought up with like a Cyrus combo. So anyway, there we go. Dragon, Arcanna, Rayquaza, so many options here. I mean, like I said, guys, there are so many decks that can play Dragonair in Rainbow Cave. It's one of the more universal buffs to any type we've ever gotten. And again, anything Dragon type is going to be able to take advantage of it. These are just some examples that have done well in recent online tournaments. But a lot of people playing this weekend, lots of big online tournaments, including PMPT number 40. So you guys should come out and play, compete, bring your new decks, and we'll see what does well. It's always really exciting. I think the meta is going to shift around so much that I'm genuinely curious, what happens in the next few days. And I think the next 2 weeks are going to be very exciting. And by the time we get into ranked, the metagame might not even be fully figured out. It might still be adapting. So hopefully we're able to cover all that here on the channel. Next up is going to be Dragonair, Mega Rayquaza, kind of simply, and now we're just playing Drampa. So Drampa, yet again, is just a strong card. This, to me, is kind of the in-between of things like Dragon, Arcanna, and Gouging Fire. It's a double colorless attack cost, and it's a basic Pokemon, and it hits for 70. So it's kind of like just a much more consistent but less powerful option that you can play in place of Gouging Fire or Mega Altaria, right? So just 2 energies, 70 damage. You do discard an energy, but that's honestly an upside when you're playing Mega Rayquaza. What's nice about this deck list is that, Drampa is just so easy to get going. Because if you go second, you're guaranteed to get it off on your second turn anyway. But if you go first, you can still get it off on your second turn with Dragonair. And because you discard 1 energy, you can just Dragonair 1 back up to Drampa and then start manually attaching to your Mega Rayquaza on the bench, which is going to allow you to kind of have that ready. And that's kind of why I prefer the 2 energy attack cost versions of Mega Rayquaza for the partner Pokemon than the 3 energy attack costs, because those ancillary kind of additional energies rather that you have available every turn, you can put those on a Mega Rayquaza and get it start building up. So again, all of these decks very, very similar, as you'll notice, but no shortage of strong Dragon type Pokemon that we can play here in these archetypes, whether it's Gouging Fire, whether it's Dragon Arcanna, whether it is Drampa. Try them all out. This one is playing Double Lucky Ice Pop, which I think is pretty funny. PCL, Cyrus, Sabrina, Poncho, all good stuff. Here's the code. I don't know which one I like better. If you ask me which one I would rather play, it's funny because when I first started to test Rayquaza, I was like, why do we have to play like any other Pokemon? Like, you can just sort of attack turn 2 with Mega Rayquaza and just sort of outpace your opponent. But, from a prize math perspective, it's best to get as much damage on the board as possible before you go into your Mega. And a lot of these Dragon type partner Pokemon can put a lot of pressure on your opponent, maybe force them into their Mega Pokemon before we go into ours, which is a big reason why I think these sort of, non-Mega EX decks are in fact quite strong right now, is because they don't necessarily have to worry about going into a Mega and then getting like outpaced or getting attacked first on their Mega, right? They can kind of just play 2 prize Pokemon. So I do like all of these concepts. And again, it's hard to know. It really is. I think right now, like the most popular way people are playing Rayquaza might be with Drampa, because it's more of just like a simple version. But we're just going to have to wait and see which ends up maybe doing the best or being the most successful. And lastly, guys, this is going to be not a Mega Rayquaza deck, but a Dragon deck. And this is going to be Walking Wake Dragonite EX with Raging Bolt. So I actually really like this, and I felt that this was super, super, super creative. We're also playing Cabby. Now, Cabby's is a border card that allows you to pull a stadium from your deck, which is pretty cool, right? So you can pretty consistently get Rainbow Cave, and this is going to be a deck focused around these ancient dragon Pokemon. We're playing double Sada, double Dragonair, and because we are playing Fire, Water, and Lightning energies, we can play both Dragonite, Walking Wake, and Raging Bull, which is really cool. This is a really cool archetype. And I like it. And this is kind of one of those things that I was really excited about when I saw Rainbow Cave, like the prospect of this buff to Dragon type and kind of the additional layered buffs of the ancient Dragon types with Sada. It opens up a ton of possibilities here. And this is by far the strongest multi-energy decks and Dragon type decks have ever been. And it's really exciting because it's taken so long. It's been so long for us to really want to play these multi-energy Dragon type decks in Pokemon Pocket, and now I think they finally have some juice to them. They got some gas to them. This is a really, really unique deck. Might be more of a niche version of these decks, but keep in mind, we're playing Dragonair anyway, so why not just play one copy of Dragonite EX? Maybe it is useful as an attacking option. Now, you can't Dragon's Blessing to yourself with Dragonair, but if you have a second one on your bench, you can Dragon's Blessing to that Dragonair. So there's just a lot of potential here. And in general, Walking Wake is a really good card. Now, the fire and water energy requirement is a little bit awkward. There's not many Pokemon with those requirements. I think Druddigon might be the only other one. But if there was a Pokemon with fire and water in its, a Dragon-type Pokemon with fire and water in its attack cost that we could end up pairing with Walking Wake, I think it would have a ton of potential. 2 energy attack cost, 60, and then 20, I think, to all of your opponent's bench, or 30 maybe even. I honestly kind of forget. Let's zoom in here so we can figure that out. It is 20, yeah, 20 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. A very, very strong card. And as we know, Raging Bolt for 5 energies, 2 water, 2 lightning, and a colorless can, of course, just one-hit KO any Pokemon on the board. So it's actually sort of a fun alternate win condition. Not something you want to lead off with, though, at all. So hopefully you don't leave with Raging Bolt here. But double Rainbow Cave, double Sada, double Pokeball, Copycat Research, 1 Cabby, 1 Cyrus. I like the deck. I don't know if this is as consistent as some of those other Dragon-type decks, but it is really cool, so I wanted to highlight it here. And here is the code here for that final deck that we're going to talk about. So, again, hopefully this kind of wraps things up a little bit. I know I haven't highlighted Typhlosion. I haven't highlighted a Wailord deck, but again, there's just not a lot of versions of those decks that people are playing. I think I maybe did highlight Wailord at one point in a video earlier. But you're just going to have to kind of wait and see. After this weekend, we're going to get an idea of which decks people are playing, which decks have been successful, and those are the decks that I'll let you know about here on the channel, so I'll keep you guys updated. And we'll probably do some gameplay here soon. I would like to kind of get hands-on with some of these decks and just make a video about it, but I'm kind of waiting to see which deck is, in fact, kind of the front runner early on this season, because that way I can kind of title the video like, strongest new deck or whatever. We'll just kind of wait and see what ends up happening. But there's the code, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy this season, and hopefully you guys enjoy PocketMads.com with the QR codes, being able to create decks, share decks, play on the ranked ladder. PocketMads.com has been a ton of fun. It's been a very successful project for us so far, and I'm really excited about it. It's free to register. We have almost 1,000 users already, even though the site has only been up for a couple of days, which is really cool. So definitely go check out PocketMads.com down in the description below, but also go ahead and register for PMPT number 40 this weekend. It's actually tomorrow at noontime. Go check out PMPT number 40. I'm excited. We're going to be live streaming it as well. So there's just a lot going on this weekend. It's a very exciting weekend. Tons of content, tons of tournaments. It's cool. It's a really fun time to be playing Pokemon Pocket right now, and I'm just really excited about it. So what do you guys think? Comment down below. Any decks we didn't talk about today that you think are at the forefront of the metagame, any new decks, comment down below. Let us know. All right, guys, let's get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys next time. And yeah. Bye.